Hey everyone, how's it going? We're back with another video for the channel for Gabe's Classroom. And I really do want to know what questions everyone has. Like, this is mostly like, it is a place for me to share things that I care about, but it's also a place to, like, if people have certain questions about education, I want to hear all about it. So if you have any sort of questions or some sort of topic education related that you want to talk about, definitely put in the comments below. So for today's video, I wanted to talk about something that I've always cared about since I started education. And for some context, I became a teacher in 2018. So this is going to be my 7th year now. I've had 6 years of experience. And one of the biggest things, I mean, I guess some more context is I went to Stanford University for undergrad. And as soon as I graduated, I decided to become a teacher. So in that decision, there is a lot of like social expectations, right? I had a lot of people, like even family, like, why'd you go to Stanford to become a teacher, right? You could be doing something else. You could be making more money. You could be, right? And that's kind of the question that's always I've always liked to think about. I've always liked to look up and read stuff that's related to that because, you know, why is that, right? Why do we see the teaching profession as something that is small, something that is less, something that is not desirable, that it's not like you're not pushing yourself, right? Especially like, you know, people talk about, oh, you went to Stanford, you're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, all this, like, yeah, cool. Why isn't teacher up there with all that, right? And I really believe that education is the future, right? You can have all the income, all the wealth, all the whatever, but if you can't educate your next generation, then that's what you do, you know? So that's a question that's always intrigued me, and being in education for the last 6 years is something that always comes to the forefront, right? There's been a couple of years where I've thought about, like, you know, I could leave education and I could, you know, brush up on my computer programming skills and look for an entry-level job in tech, right? And I'd make more money, I'd have a flexible schedule. And the push is always there, right? As people that want to like grow and make more money and have like a financial stability, it's important. I'm not going to say it's not, but I really want to talk about, I guess, why that is. Why do we not value education? So that's something I've learned about history, is that, you know, history dictates reality, present day reality. So like the fact that like low income communities are mostly like brown and black people is because, you know, historically hundreds of years ago or even 50 years ago, right, there were things that were being, you know, segregated, right? There were things that were allowed to one group of people that weren't allowed to the other one. And while that isn't explicitly written in the law today, like those are the effects of just historical lingering effects of that. So same in education. You have, you know, this perception that like education, it's like a woman's job, right? And fast forward to 2024, and you still have the majority of the field being dominated by women. So as a male educator, I don't, you know, I'm part of a minority in that sense. And as a male educator of color also, that's even more of a minority. So I think that's some historical context as to why it has never really been viewed as like a lucrative career. It's because it's always been like, you know, a household job to educate kids. So I really do think that we need to kind of redefine and like just like turn it on its head, right? It's not something that is just like, oh, like it's like a household job. It's like, you know, it's not anyone's, it's our societal responsibility to educate our future generation. So we need to treat it that way, right? The fact that we still have like crazy income inequality or crazy like housing segregation, like it's not written in the law, but if you look, you know, different neighborhoods, there's neighborhoods that are predominantly white, there's neighborhoods that are predominantly black, predominantly Hispanic, predominantly Asian. Like there's a lot of that's still in effect, even though it's not like segregated. But all that to say is that I think that we really need to, redefine education, right? We need to like redefine the profession. We need to treat it what it's worth. And I think one of the biggest ways to do that is to pay teachers more. And so I think currently, like, education is funded with three things, and I'll put this graphic up on the screen. Most of it comes from, as you can see, it's local and state dollars. So that's property taxes. That's the state decides. Most of it's taxes, really. Like, most of education is funded through taxes, local property taxes, and the state has its revenue and it allocates a specific amount of money to education. So I think the problem is that there's not a consistent and reliable source of money to pay all the teachers that are in the workforce, right? And anytime, so like for some, I guess I'll put some more context up here. For COVID, right, there was this emergency relief fund they're called ESSER funds, elementary and secondary school emergency relief, ESSER. And it was $190 billion that the federal government gave to the schools in all the states, right? So you hear that and you're like, oh my God, that's such an amazing thing, right? This money is great. Education needs more money. Awesome. Wrong. That money it's like, here you go. It's like you give a kid $200, right? And like, what did he do with it? I don't know. So that was the big issue. Like, and even now, like, whenever we're talking about education, there's a lot of like, in those kind of conversations, people say like, yo, we gave schools all this money and we have nothing to show for it. Performance scores are the same, nothing has changed. So like, I think that was a really big mistake. And it was part of like COVID, like everything was crazy then, which is, I guess but still, like, it was a large sum of money that was given to education, more than like we had ever really seen before. And since we didn't really tell people how to use it, it got used in different ways, but then we all of a sudden can't track how that impacts student learning and student achievement. So I think that's the big problem, right? You can't just give money to schools. Some states, I'm sure, used it to pay their teachers more, but then the funding runs out, and then what? You give everyone a pay cut. So I think it really is like, I don't know. We have to find a way to restructure the way teachers are paid. And there are teachers that are really good at their job. There's teachers that are not good at their job. So like, how do we evaluate, right? How do we determine who's good, who's not? And then how do we reward that with like, why not, 90, 100, 120, 130, like six-figure salaries. But we can't do that if we don't have a funding source, right? So that's always been something that I've been passionate about. It's a conversation that I love having with people. It's like, why don't we pay teachers? What can we do to pay them more, right? Obviously, it needs to be some sort of funding, or it has to be some sort of legislation, some sort of policy that all of a sudden says, we're going to give, this much more money to teachers. But then even that is really hard to see how that would go through, because you tell people, we're going to give this much of your taxes away, and there's going to be people saying, don't raise my taxes. So it is like a political in nature. It's a political topic in nature, which is kind of unfortunate. I really wish that there was a way to like just discuss pure merit of teaching, pure funding of education, without kind of letting politics and like party lines blur everything. But that I think is what we need. Like, what we need is like, we need to find a way to figure out who the good teachers are and then pay them, right? There's a lot of districts, including Dallas ISD, that I currently work in, that I think do a decent job of that. But I think it needs to just expand. It needs to like be more prevalent. And then that way we can start to recruit really talented teachers, people that care about it, but don't do it because it doesn't pay enough, or don't do it because X, Y, and Z. We need to restructure it. So that's what I got for today. I mean, let me know what do y'all think? Like, why don't we view teaching as a really good profession? Why don't we see it as something desirable, like lawyers, doctors, like the, fancy careers, quote unquote? And two, how can we change that? How can we change the way society views teachers? And I guess third question is, how, I guess if we were to fund teachers more, right, how can we have a reliable source of funding outside of maybe like just raising taxes to pay everyone. But yeah, that's all for today. Let me know what y'all think. As always, like button, subscribe helps me out a lot. Really hoping to grow this channel to have these kinds of conversations at like a large scale. So thanks everyone. See you next time.